Hi all, we are from Technology Training Experts and we welcome you to the series of Tosca interview questions and answers. To tell something about ourselves, we are working in Tosca Automation for about 10 years and have been interviewing from past 7 years for some noted MNC companies. We are creating this YouTube series to help the Tosca aspirants crack their interviews. And at the end of this video, we'll give you some points of what exactly the interviewers look for in the Tosca candidates. So look through the complete video and happy learning. Okay, let's jump into the first question. Okay, question 1. How do we get 3 years, 2 months and 5 days back date from today in the format of dd/mm/yyyy? This is the format we want. So for this we use date function. Okay, so let's understand first of all what exactly is the syntax of the date. So the current date function syntax is flower bracket date of base date of offset of format, and we close the flower bracket. So if you want today's date, okay, forget about all these things. If you want just today's date, we don't have to give the syntax this complex. We can simply say flower bracket date, close the flower bracket. That's it. It gives the date. But if the question is all about give the past date or the future date, right, then we have to introduce all these things. Now let's understand each and every part that is present inside this syntax. So base date can be left blank as the requirement is asked for today. So first of all, let's understand what is base date. So if I ask the date to be calculated, right, from today, we don't have to give any value here. But if I ask you, okay, get me 5 years back date from January 1st to 2024, right, then you will think you will write the base date as January 1st, 2024. Okay, so whichever date from that date you want to calculate the past dates or future dates, right, you will give that date here. But for us, it is today's date. So we don't have to give any value inside this base date. We can leave it as blank. Now, offset calculates the past and future dates. The second bracket, you see the offset. So now this actually calculates the past dates and also future dates. So if I ask the past date, if we are looking for a past date, it will become a negative value minus, and if we are looking for a future date, it becomes a positive value plus. Okay, so as we are asked for here as back date, right, we use negative values. Now what is the last bracket that we see here is the format. The format should be dd/mm/yyyy, because that is what is asked. You can give any format you want. You can use dots, you can use hyphens, you can use month first and date next and then yyyy, or only month and years. You can use any of these formats in the format. So after updating all these things, we get our requirement as 3 years, 2 months and 5 days back. So it becomes as minus 3y minus 2m minus 5d, because everything is past. But be mindful, the minus 2m becomes m as capital here. M implies month. So having said that, if we apply this to our date function, right, so this is how the answer looks like. The flower bracket date of the base date will be empty, and in the offset we give minus 3y minus 2m and minus 5d, and in the format we give the required format of whatever format we want. So this is the answer for this interview question. Okay, now let's go to the question number 2. What is the difference between the test configuration parameter and the business parameter PP? Now, to answer this, TCP parameters can be set at test cases or test case folder or execution list levels that impacts the behavior of the test execution. And TCP generalizes the settings for one or a group of test cases. And an example would be Chrome, the browser is equal to Chrome. So this TCP parameters is more of a setting, either for a single test case or a group of test cases. Now, whereas business parameter, it is linked up with your library reusable test step block. Okay, so BP helps in passing a specific data for each of the reusable test step block references in the test cases. So if you want a particular test step to be repeated multiple times, you put that in the reusable test step block under the library. But you want to reuse it multiple times, but with different data, right? Then we introduce a business parameter for that step and we use it. So whereas TCP generalizes the data, business parameter diversifies the data. Okay, now that's the difference. The examples of business parameters are, so you see, like customer name is equal to ABC or DEF or something else, so we are diversifying. Okay, now question 3: what are the various combinational methods available in the Tosca test case design section? Combinatorial methods are like, see, when we have a test case which has data that we want to handle, we can handle using the test case design test sheets. Right? When we want to execute the same test case for different combinations of this data, right? That's when the attributes and the instances of these attributes, whatever we have added inside this test sheet, we want combinations to this. So we'll right click on this test sheet in the test case design and we select the combinatorial methods, and there are 5 different options that we can apply here. Predominantly we'll use only 4, but there are actually 5 values. So we use all combinations: orthogonal combinations, pairwise combinations, linear expansion and linear expansion relations. Okay, so I'll take one example. So if we take all combinationals, right? So every attribute and every instance of attribute will be combined with other instances of each and every attribute inside the test sheet. So giving you massive combinations. And now, but the Tosca is suggesting the linear expansion. So for this, we have to apply the stride through instance. So we'll identify the stride through instances for each and every attribute, and then so we'll get the stride through combination, and from there the other combinations will be built up. So, but having said that, these are all the different methods that we can apply to identify the combinations inside your test case design. Or without these combinations also, you can actually use the data directly from your test sheets into your test cases. Okay, so question number 4: name the data handling options available in Tosca to handle a project framework and select best options out of that. So we generally ask this question to understand the framework level of understanding from the candidate. So to assess how much the candidate is aware of handling a framework, we ask this question. So to answer this, first list down all the options that we have here. Now, as you can see, the first option is test data service and test case design and Excel handling, Excel sheets, using Excel sheets or using an external database or using buffers, internal T-box buffers or library parameters or even TCP parameters. So these are all some of the different options that are available for us to handle data inside our projects. But again, what are the best methods is, if you ask me, with all these years of experience, I'm going to go with the TDS and TCD. These are the two best options to handle the data from a framework perspective. So some people do handle with Excel also. I've seen that in some projects, and some people go for external databases also, but these are all external, so which means the performance will be a bit slower, and there are cases where I've seen where the Excel sheets gets crashed up. So yes, it's not advisable to go there. I've seen people handling the complete project using buffers too. It is advisable for smaller projects. For bigger projects, it is again tougher. So out of all these options, I'll always go with TDS and TCD. These are all my answers. Okay, best options. Question number 5: what is the formula for calculating the weight of a requirement in the requirement section? Although this requirement section is very mildly used in projects. Okay, but this is a very good interview question that might be asked. Okay, so what is the weight formula? So for calculating the weight, right, we assess the values of frequency class and damage class for each of the requirement. If you have 100 requirements, we'll identify the frequency class and damage class for all of these 100 requirements. Now the range of this frequency class and damage class can vary from 0 to 10, where 0 implies low and 10 implies high. And we also decide a common value to the base for all the project requirements. Generally, the value of the base would be 2. Even if you increase this also, the percentages won't change. Now, having said all these things, the actual formula for this weight is equal to base to the power of frequency class into base to the power of damage class, whereas base is equal to 2 and frequency class and damage class will be defined for each of the requirement. Okay, this is how we calculate the weight. Now question number 6. How to handle the common objects present across multiple web pages of a single web application. So in a single web application, you have multiple web pages. Now all these web pages has a common object, one or multiple common objects. How do you handle it? Do you create modules separately for all of these pages, or do you create only one module which can handle all of these objects in multiple web pages? How do we handle it? So this is again a framework level question to understand how many years of experience you have or you have been using Tosca, because the more experience that you gain, there is a high chance of you using this in your projects. So to assess that, we ask this question. So the answer would be very simple. So example, we identify the objects that are common across all the web pages. First of all, if you take the same demo web shop application, right? Example, you see an object. Example like welcome. If you see this welcome in all the web pages, login page, register page, and all these web pages, you see the same word welcome is common. Okay. So first of all, identify those the common objects like that, and scan the objects in one web page and create a module. So take one object, take one web page, and you scan that and you create the module. Make sure we select the title property. Now go to that particular module and edit the title property and introduce a regular expression to it. Example, okay, if we have the titles as demo webshop.register, demo webshop.login, demo webshop.books, demo webshop.apparels, right, we can generalize all of these pages into as demo webshop star or demo webshop.star, whichever is comfortable to you. So that is how we create only one module which can handle all of the common objects. Very useful. You don't have to create multiple modules using this option. This will save a lot of space of your workspace, and also it will ease up your framework to work better. Okay, so demo web shop star, we introduce a regular expression. Now question number 7. Can we have the same test step for both recovery scenario and the cleanup scenario? So we ask this question just to understand, not just they know the recovery scenario and cleanup scenario concept, but did they ever use it? So if you start using this concept, right, you will understand this point very well. So first of all, let's understand what is recovery scenario and cleanup scenario. Okay, so recovery scenario helps fix a faulty test case by executing the test steps mentioned under it. So if you have a test case that is failing, that you see as frequent failures because of some reason, now before going to the next test case, I want to try to fix this. I want my automation test case to automatically fix this. So that is when I introduce the recovery scenario. So after executing the recovery scenario test steps, whatever I have mentioned in the recovery scenario, it will retry either the complete test case or only from the test step where exactly it is failing, or inside that only from the test step value where it failed. So this is what is the recovery scenario. Whereas cleanup scenario is all about the next test case. So if your current test case is a failure, and if you see that there is a possibility of this failure impacting the next test case, then you introduce the cleanup scenario. Cleanup scenario helps clean the test case failures so that the next test case will not be impacted. Okay, so the answer to this question is yes. We can have the same test step added for both recovery and cleanup scenario. It depends upon your requirement, where exactly it is failing, what kind of an issue is that, and is there any common step that we can do for applying for recovery scenario and cleanup scenario. Yes, based upon all these things, our answer is yes. Example, I have given you a simple example here, close browser step. So if your test case is failing, sometimes you log off and you close the browser and you go back and you executed the test case from first, using the recovery scenario. The cleanup scenario also, if the current test case is failing, you simply clean up with a closed browser so that the next test case will run peacefully. So yes, there can be common steps. The same steps can be used. Now, question number 8. How to input different synchronization time for different test cases in Tosca? Now, this is really interesting. So, whenever we ask a question to the interview, in the interview, right? Like we ask the candidates, okay, how do we set the synchronization time? And the general answer would be go to the settings and update in the settings. But that is universal answer. That's understandable. That's a correct answer too. But we are tweaking this question just to understand how well they know the concept of synchronization. So my question is not about where do we set the synchronization setting. It's all about if my test cases, if I have two test cases, one test case I want to wait for 60 seconds and the other test case I want to wait for 30 seconds when I apply the wait on action mode. So how do we do that? So synchronization time helps to sync the test case and the application execution, obviously, to sync up both. We can add the TCP parameter synchronization timeout during wait on with the value in the milliseconds. Now this setting can be done in the settings option, yes, but that is common for your complete workspace. Okay, but I don't want for the complete workspace. I want it for only specific test cases. So wait on TCP parameter can be set up on execution list, test case, folder levels. So there is a TCP parameter called wait on, synchronization timeout during wait on. So I have two test cases. One test case for 60 seconds, another is for 30 seconds. So I go to the first test case, I create a TCP parameter called synchronization timeout during wait on with 60 seconds, and go to the second test case and I update the same parameter with 30 seconds. So the same concept, but I'm applying separate values for two different test cases. So separate value for synchronization timeout during wait on TCP parameter for each test cases can do this trick for us. Okay. Now question number 9. How do we integrate Tosca with the Jenkins and trigger the test case execution? Now we ask these questions just to understand what is the candidate exposure of integrating the Tosca with other tools. This will be helpful with the scheduling and triggering the test cases. Okay, so answer would be we update the below TCP parameters as true in the execution list. So there are some TCP parameters called continuous integration build root folder. I am a huge fan of updating these parameters not from the settings but from the test case level on the execution list level, because that has an impact. I can decide which test case to be executed, which test case not to be executed, not as a single one shot setting. So we update these TCP parameters as true for the execution list whichever I want to execute. Now there is something called Tosca CI client configuration file inside your workspace. So you go to that configuration file, you open that configuration file, and there will be an option called workspace. So whichever workspace that you are working on, where you have set these options, right, you take that workspace name and you update that in the workspace column of the Tosca CI client. Now create a Jenkins build triggering Jenkins build. So go to the Jenkins, create a build there. So triggering the Tosca CI client config file. So during the build process, right, like the Jenkins will kickstart this Tosca CI client. So inside this Tosca CI client, we have the workspace. The control will go to the workspace, and inside this workspace, there will be a lot of execution lists, but we have kept it true for these settings only for the execution list what I want to execute. So it will be executed, and the results will be populated from the Jenkins. So this is how one way to do it. There are multiple ways of doing this. You can connect your Tosca to the uh, to any version control tool, and from there you can connect that to Jenkins and you can trigger it. So every time you create a new test case, obviously a new build will be automatically created. So you can go to that level and you can do it, but this is the basic concept of doing it. So question number 10, the last question. So explain the traceability between the work products in Tosca across the sections. We asked this question just to understand what are the different sections the candidate is aware of. And it's not only about updating, knowing only couple of sections, whether the candidate has worked end to end inside Tosca. Okay. So the answer would be, we first create the requirements under the requirement set and assign the weight for all of the requirements. So we first start with the requirements. So we create requirements, and for each of these requirements, we identify the modules, objects in the modules, we create modules, and from there we create test cases. So we create test cases for each of the requirements and map it to them. So once the test cases are created, I drag those test cases and drop it on the requirement sets. Make sure to update the work state accordingly. There are three different types of work states. So plan, in work, and completed. So this will have a huge difference in your reporting. So make sure you give it correctly. So once your test case is created, you drag it and you drop it onto the requirements. Now you go and drag this test cases and drop it on the execution list, and you execute the test cases. Now the test cases are executed in the execution list. Now simply drag this execution list and drop it on the requirement set. Map the execution list to the requirement set. So now requirements has test cases are executed, execution list is dragged and dropped to the requirements. So now the requirement set has the reporting of how many test cases are there, and out of that how many are pass and how many are fail. We'll have a clear reporting here. Okay, so traceability can be established between your requirements, test cases, execution list, issues, all of these sections inside your Tosca. We can include test case design also into this. Okay, so this is all about traceability. So that's with the question number 10. So as I promised in the starting of this video, so I said I'll give some tips of what actually the interviewers expect during your interview in Tosca. Okay, so what does the interviewers look for in Tosca candidate to select for the corporate companies? We as interviewers, right, we look the below. The very first, at least we do, is working knowledge more than the conceptual knowledge. So you do something, you learn something, you always learn the conceptual knowledge, but whether you have applied that in your work or not, that tells whether this person is having enough knowledge or not. So like I have asked the first question as the date, right? So if we ask the date function, right, like anyone will explain the concept of or the formula of or the syntax of the date function, but if we ask a question related to that, then they'll start applying. So working knowledge is more than the conceptual knowledge, so we'll look for the working knowledge. And framework creation and its maintenance. So say simple automation test case, simply like I create modules, I drag those modules and I create test cases. A simple basic test case, even that is automation. But in projects, right, creating just automation test cases won't be enough. If I ask you to create only one test case, you might be able to create it happily, but if I ask you to create some 100 test cases, you have to be really careful of how do you handle this 100 test cases, because if you give your username and password directly inside these test cases, tomorrow if the password changes, you have to come back and you have to update all the 100 test cases. That's not good maintenance, that's not good automation. So you have to handle the data, you have to handle the common test steps, you have to handle the common test cases. So these are all the things form your framework. So that's where we have asked some questions related to the framework inside this interview questions. Okay, how better we use the standard modules? Tricentis has given us the standard modules and they are beautiful. Those will help us in every single day in and day out work inside our projects, like taking a screenshot, creating a file, and creating a folder, and using this HTML web page, standard modules, Excel modules, database modules. You use it every single day in and day out. So we look or we post questions related to this standard modules and scheduling the test cases. So I'll tell you something interesting. This procedure of scheduling these test cases will be different in every company and every project inside the company. It is completely different. It depends upon how they have designed it. But as an interviewers, we'll still post this question because we just need to know theoretically if the person or the candidate can knows what exactly is this scheduling. So if you know couple of ways of how to handle this, how to schedule the test cases, then you are good. Okay. So integration with other tools, yeah, this is also very important. So if we take now, we never use issues section inside our Tosca. So we integrate this with Jira to handle all the bugs. So how do you integrate the Tosca with Jira? So these are all the things that you need to be aware of to do the test management, to do the issue handling. So we'll ask some questions related to the integration and latest advancements in Tricentis and its products. Now this is really really important because Tricentis has got so many products, like example Neoload, Testim, Qtest. So you just don't stick with only Tosca, because we have to understand what exactly are other products and we can enhance our project exploration using that. So definitely you can expect some questions related to this. So that's with the interview questions and answers. And if you have any questions related to anything, you can post us in this video. And happy learning. Wait for the part 2. Thank you. Hope you like it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so that you will never miss our next concept. Also, if you have any questions, please comment in the video or mail us at technologytrainingexperts@gmail.com. See you in the next video.